New concerns over escalating tensions with Iran after the U.S. conducted airstrikes against militants in Yemen. President Trump saying Saturday's strikes were to protect American shipping and to send a message to Tehran over its support for the Houthis' attacks on vessels in the Red Sea. Joining me now is national security analyst and former Defense One executive editor, Kevin Barron. So, Kevin, thanks for joining us. I first want to get your take on these strikes. What are the national security implications here?
Well, this is, a major shipping lane that's been under attack for quite a long time. And, my first reaction to hearing these strikes was it's kind of about time. That's what the national security community that I followed has been saying for a while, that the thought that the Biden administration had really been reacting to, these Houthi attacks by keeping it very small, very limited, going after launches, not wanting to escalate anything, not take the bait from Iran, if you will. But it kept going on and on and on. And so it's no surprise to me that, the Trump administration early in its days has launched this attack to try to really just put a stop to it.
Well, let me have a bigger picture here, because Donald Trump last week reportedly sent a letter to Iran. I mean, we haven't heard much since then. Do you know where that stands and whether what we saw yesterday is sending any message about interest in negotiating with Tehran?
I don't. I mean, sending a letter to Iran sounds like a bad love song. I think this is the real message today. I think, there's a couple of things in play. A lot of what was going on with the Houthis was related to what was going on in Israel. And, the Houthis were attacking ships passing through, and there are different points in that phase where they were saying they were only going to attack ships that were bringing supplies to Israel or military supplies. And what I think changed recently was the Houthis saying they were going to start attacking any ships going to Israel. So none of this is legal in international law. It's really just up to the world leaders to decide how far do you want to take it. And do you consider attacking, Houthi launching points or anything else a direct attack on Iranian proxies, giving Iran an excuse to do more of what Iran does. So I think we should expect that Trump, like everything else this year, is going to do what he said. And when it comes to Iran, they want to restart that maximum pressure campaign, which really just meant more attacks and more pressure on the proxies in the region that the Trump side feels were let to, go unchecked a little too long.
Let's look at Saturday, when the Trump administration began making some pretty deep cuts to Voice of America, another government-run pro-democracy programming that broadcasts news to millions around the world. The organization's director said all VOA employees have been put on leave, all of them. So explain VOA's mission and how dismantling it undermines America's interests. I mean, what is Trump's motivation here?
Yeah, a lot of questions there. So anyone who was a Cold War kid like we were remembers the importance of these types of tools in the Cold War arsenal to bring truth behind the Iron Curtain or to inside, dictatorial regimes that don't inform their publics and just to be a truth teller about the world. And the idea was that, and lots of VOA veterans will say this themselves, the idea was that even if VOA told bad news about the United States, it was still the truth, and showing the example of America's journalism, even government-backed journalism with a purpose that was editorially free to report bad news about its own government, was a good example to show what democracy meant, what America's version of that meant, and it was a good example against the alternative in the Cold War. And it also informed those publics inside those dictatorial regimes and inside the Iron Curtain to help end it and overthrow those regimes. I used to work for Stars and Stripes, a similar but different government-owned publication of the U.S. Army that has editorial freedom mandated by Congress in law. And I wonder if that's another target. I mean, every Pentagon press secretary wanted to control Stars and Stripes. They didn't like that the Pentagon had people that could write bad news about the Pentagon. But eventually they would respect the mission and the mandate for what it was worth. So that's part of it. Trump's motivation, there's a lot of reporting in history back to the first term where Trump hated VOA because they reported bad news on Trump. They would call it like it is sometimes. And so, and not just VOA, but Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Asia, all the different, government broadcasting agencies. They've always had a beef for them. They did put the screws to VOA and those agencies in the last Trump administration. And this time they've wasted no time just to try to yank the plug. It's not official, but effectively, like all these other government cutbacks, it's yanking the plug on the Voice of America, which is really, it's hard to find enemies of Voice of America who are outside of them, who are not on the receiving end of their message.
Yeah, again, they're pulling the plug all under the guise of, we're going to save money. Let's move on to the Russia-Ukraine war with Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to the Middle East, who's now also taking a lead role in discussions, who held a 3-hour meeting with Vladimir Putin Friday. So this is what he said about that today.
Before this visit, there was another visit, and before that visit, the two sides were miles apart in where they were. The two sides are today a lot closer. We had some really positive results coming out of Saudi Arabia, discussions led by our National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, and our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. I described my conversation with President Putin as equally positive. So the two sides we've narrowed the differences between them.
Can I ask you quickly, Kevin, where you believe these peace negotiations are going, and if you see any scenario where this administration applies pressure on Moscow?
One would hope on that last point, but we just simply are not seeing it. Look, I cringe listening to Witkoff and the description of these as, peace negotiations or progress toward them. If anyone who believes in the freedom of Europe and the freedom of democracy and self-determination of rule of peoples cannot possibly want to give Russia anything. So every time that the Trump administration presents any movement in these talks as a willful movement by the Ukrainians to a peace table with willful Russians, it's ridiculous. That's not the truth. The truth is that the Trump administration continues to pressure the Ukrainians to give up, to stop the fighting, to stop defending themselves, in hopes that Putin will then also stop fighting too, and then Trump can claim victory to all. But we have not seen any indication that Putin's going to do any of that. And so, I think if you ask somebody like, former Secretary of CIA Director Robert Gates what he thinks about a 3-hour meeting with Putin, I think, he'd laugh off the table that the Americans have gained any kind of advantage here. In the end, I think, yes, to answer your question, there's a chance that Russia takes what Trump is giving them, which is so generous. They get to look like they're ending this war that they started, that they stopped the killing that they started, and that Trump gets to look like a grand peacemaker, when in reality, it's the end of territorial integrity for Europe, not just Ukraine. I tell people to listen to the Europeans. Almost every single European leader has come together and has begun to issue the strongest, most unified, most defensive statements in support of Ukraine and what needs to be done militarily that I've heard the entire war. Gone are the pretexts that the eastern states along Russia's border are ready to fight, and they want more Russian support. They want to launch missiles into Russia to stop the war, and the West is more timid. That's gone. All of continental Europe is on the same page right now, which is just remarkable. And it's not because of Trump's strategic genius. It's because of his missteps that our allies and adversaries who can't trust the United States anymore have had to rally into this new position.